going to start recording right now. Go right ahead.
I believe I was after Ricky. Hi, my name is Dominique Kempf. I played Sarah in Ragtime. Very, very thankful to be here. As a performer, as an artist, I would say the thing that represents me the most is the story itself. I really love telling stories and be able to connect with people who've lived a very different life than me or something that I've experienced myself. So thanks.
Dudney, why don't you drop on in there?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dudney Joseph Jr. I was in Smokey Joe's Cafe and Violet. As a performer, I'll follow up with what Dominique said. I think it's a great opportunity for me to place myself in someone else's shoes, to be able to see things from another perspective and another walk of life. So that's the most thing that I love about being a performer.
Hi, everyone. Hola a todos. My name is Victoria Pérez. I was in Smokey Joe's Cafe. And I do what I do because as a performer, as a theater practitioner, I think that theater is the most perfect vehicle to explore the human experience, human connectivity, right? And I think through that exploration, as artists, we learn so much about compassion and sympathy and empathy. And there's just nothing better than to be in a profession that allows us to do that every single day.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Marie Roberts. I was in Smokey Joe's Cafe and I was Violet in the musical Violet. Myself as a performer, I was blessed to go to Niagara University where I learned under the wonderful Tim Ward, and his philosophy on theater was to tell the story. It was very important to be honest, truthful, tell the story, and transport yourself, but also the audience to this brand new place. And I absolutely adore doing that day to day. Please, Lord, please let it come back soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So we're going to jump right in. Okay, so we're talking about these three pieces. Again, we said these three pieces premiered in the 1990s. It was a very tumultuous time. When you think back to the 1990s, there was a lot of war happening. There was a lot of political strife, but there was a lot of really great music and a lot of really great theater and a lot of nostalgic pieces. All of these pieces are about nostalgia, are about remembering a time that isn't in the now. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to perform in those pieces decades after they were created and what nostalgia means to you as an artist, and how did you channel that through the work?
I can go ahead.
Yeah, come on with it.
So one thing, so Lorenzo and I played opposite each other in Ragtime, and that was a really lovely experience because I had a really great, caring partner. He's so sweet. One thing that we always talked about in the talkbacks for Ragtime, and Ricky was in it too, and Alex, a lot of people in here were in it, is we were telling a story that is still so relevant. And I think all of these pieces have a touch of that to them. But for me, I played Sarah, and not to bring it to such a deep moment right away, but a really big thing for me in my mind was the police brutality. Like, Sarah gets violently beaten to death by police, and she's the sweetest woman in the entire show, right? And I think now it relates to that still happens, especially with people of color. I was living something in the now, but in this lovely, sweet character, right? And this can happen to sweet people or people that you don't know at all and you don't know their story. But for me, that's something that I had to go through every single night and know that it's still a really, really big problem in the world, and especially in America. So I was almost reliving somebody else's footsteps every single day, and that broke my heart. So that was like kind of a messy answer, but it's reliving, it's still happening, and it was lovely to connect with the piece because of that, but it really makes you like walk away and say, wow, have we gotten better? Have we changed? It makes you ask a lot of questions about your culture and your lifestyle.
Thank you. That was a great answer. Thank you. All of the answers are perfect as soon as they come from you, because they're coming from you. Anybody else want to speak on that? Ricky?
Sure. So thinking about the fact that all of these shows came out in the 90s, I myself, I grew up in the 90s, and you know, growing up and going to school and everything, I went to school where there were a lot of people that looked exactly like me, that looked like how I look. And I didn't really understand, I didn't have a scope of like what kind of issues, real world issues were happening, you know, outside of my little bubble. And knowing that this show came out and it made such a clear point that these are problems that were happening in that time, knowing that those were happening as I was growing up and I was just so unaware of any of it, you know, it's frightening, you know, but being able now that, you know, I'm fortunate to be in the position that I'm in, that I get to perform in these kinds of shows, you know, it's really important for people who can perform in these shows to perform in them, and for people to go see these kinds of shows, because, you know, just like Dom said, these are issues that are happening every day. And whether you know about it or not, whether you are growing up in a bubble like I did or not, you should go see theater that has something to say.
Hello. So just about, you know, I was Cole House Walker Jr. in Ragtime, and just to kind of bring that nostalgia and that theme within Ragtime, you kind of, you know, just as the story as a whole in a collective, you know, the first thing I think is like this melting pot of culture, class, police brutality, and that nostalgia is that where, as Americans, just kind of speaking to the folks here, that's like a thing, it's still relevant, and it's a thing we're all still dealing with together. And it's like we're telling the story of people from the past that we're still actually trying to wrap up and finish a story that hasn't necessarily tied the knots yet. And it's kind of still like an open-ended story that we're all kind of adding these pieces to, right? And we're all trying to get our own like subjects, and we're all trying to get our own like themes within this melting pot of a story together, that's just going to be this long-lasting journey for entertainers, for everyone. And I think that's the funny thing about these three musicals and that nostalgia point, because it's just like, I feel like it's one of those things where it can be always a to be continued at the end of when that curtain drops or when that curtain closes. And I think that's when you want to say, I think that's also a great thing, because then you leave people thinking. You get people thinking every time they leave, and some of those topics still stick. So that nostalgia and that continuing story, I think it's just going to be a journey that we're all going to have to slowly start to hopefully wrap up at some point and get to this get to that final page when we're all staring at each other in this big circle, whether it be wherever you're from, and we go, okay, we get it to some certain extent, but here we are, and we're still telling that story and that going through that journey together. I don't know, that's kind of where my head is on everything.
Thank you. Alex?
And I will say to that point, Lorenzo, as theater goers, as people who do theater, as people who are in the theater, all of us together, it really does help us understand our own mixed fluency being where we all are in our own anti-racist journey. Because it's not enough just to say, that person, something bad is happening to them, it's not happening to me. now is the time, as we can see in our current state of society, where we need to recognize where we are in our views and say, okay, how do I further, how do I fix, how do I help, how do I grow, how do I advocate for other people who are not like me? And I think that's what's really beautiful about these three stories, is that they're telling completely different stories. These people have lived years and years and years and years and years, but it's the same story over and over and over again. It deals with the same themes over and over and over again. So how do we, as content creators, as theater goers, as watchers, how do we stop that? Or how do we further the conversation so that we don't keep going and going and going in the same circular motion over and over? That's what I found with these three shows, that personally doing Ragtime, that's what I really found is what helps me in my ethos as a creator.
Thank you. Does someone else want to speak on that? Dudney, did you?
Yeah, I have to agree with Alex. I think the main thing for me, sometimes when I think of nostalgia, I always think of the good times, like with my friends, like when we were in college, like, oh, let's remember like when we didn't have bills to pay, or, you know, all we cared about was where were we going to hang out all day and just, you know, not have to have any care in the world. But it's funny when you refer to nostalgia in this context, especially for me, for Violet, I found Violet was an experience where I was excited to do the piece because it was vocally challenging for me, but then the content, I grew up in a situation or a community where I happened to be the only person of color in my neighborhood, in my elementary school and middle school, and then in high school, there were a few others. So right at the top of the show that I get called the N-word. And that was something where you look at, that's a moment where I'd love to not go back to and not experience and not relive. However, to kind of piggyback off of Alex's point, it's important to share that story and tell and decades later tell that same story again, because the change hasn't happened yet. And a lot of people have swept those issues under the rug because they're not in front of their face or in their inner circle, it's not happening. So I think for me, it just became a part of my duty to, you know, make sure that we tell this and go back to that moment and muck up all those feelings again, because, you know, the work still needs to be done.
Thank you. Michelle?
So I'm going to piggyback now off of Dudney by saying that slightly controversial decision by me to have my children at every one of my performances. It's very important to me that they see what I do. They see why I'm not home. They see that this is a passion and I'm pursuing it and I'm doing it. I was so excited to bring them to Violet. And it was for pure education. Obviously with theater, yes, but it was very important to me that they understood that this isn't just a play. This happens. It happened and it happens. And very pleased when I'm explaining to my son about, you know, imagine there being a world where friend ABC cannot be in the same room with you because they're a different color, they look differently. And both my kids were just completely shocked and hurt and confused, and why would this happen? And in that moment, I thought, okay, it's a small change. It's a start, and it's starting at my home, where kindness and love and acceptance, friendship, all that means something now. And I think, you know, again, did I solve everything? No. Did I solve it in my home? Yes, 100%. So, you know, theater is so transformative, and it tells a story, but it also teaches. And in that moment, it was such a beautiful teaching moment for my children to understand that this happened, and in this house, it will never happen, ever. So.
Thank you. Other thoughts on that? More piggybacking, follow-ups? Okay, if you just joined us, I'm Thembi Duncan. I'm the Director of Arts Engagement and Education at Shea's Performing Arts Center in Buffalo, New York. And I have a bunch of just like a bouquet of roses here for you. Wonderful Western New York musical theater artists and artists in general who are talking about their experiences with race and class and gender and how that comes through theater and through their bodies as artists. So I want to talk about difference. All of these pieces explore difference in different ways. And right now, where we are in 2020, difference is used as a tool. It's used as a weapon. It's used as an excuse, a shield, a bridge. It's used in a lot of different ways. And right now, it is pretty much socially acceptable to reject people if they are different and to disconnect. And I wonder if any of you have found in any of these works or in other works that you've done or in other parts of your life, ways that difference is being treated and ways that you're connecting to difference. Are you able to connect to people over difference, or are you finding that you're rejecting difference? How is difference showing up for you in these pieces and in your lives?
Can I? Yes. It's not, my example isn't with one of the pieces. I have found that I have felt differently about someone once I find out their political beliefs. And it was really scary. It was, and sad and I think that's where a lot of us are. This person was in my house. I had just met him. Somebody brought him. We were having a wonderful conversation for about 2 or 3 hours that he was in my house. We shared a meal. I was like, whoa, this guy is just so cool, so lighthearted, so humble. And then through conversation with someone else, I found out what his political beliefs are. And I immediately went, so I went from actually thinking really positively about this person and really liking his demeanor and what he brought in and his energy, to just hearing what his political beliefs were. And I was like, oh my God, oh, that's scary. And I had to check myself. I was like, that's horrible. But at the same time, I don't agree with the gentleman and his political beliefs. So how do you reconcile that? Like, as a human, I was like, I really enjoyed his energy. I really enjoyed what we were talking about. But as soon as that happened, there was a big old stop. And it was like cancel culture. Like, I was like, get out. But then I was like, but wait, how is this what the world is going to be now? Like, is that it? Can we converse after I find out that he has a completely different belief system than I do? Like, it was just a scary moment in my life, like just the immediate reaction of, oh, now he's a bad person. When just seconds before I was like, he's a cool guy.
Well, what do we think about that? How do we reconcile those two feelings and those two ideas? And I invite the others of you to respond to that, because that's a really interesting conflict to have within yourself. And I wonder, have you encountered these conflicts in similar ways, or when you're doing a piece, maybe you're playing a character who has a different belief. How are you able to still connect to that character and still tell the truth of that person? Oh, Dominique, are you?
I'm just sitting here commenting like out loud.
Uh-huh.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think that what Vicki just explained, we all have definitely had, especially recently, have all had moments like that. And within these shows too, with Ragtime, you see polar opposites, and they don't really talk too much. It's more about injustices in each group and how an injustice is explained in each group, how an injustice to Sarah and Cole House, what they really went through is terrible, but an injustice in like mother and younger brother, the way they see things is completely different. I think to come to a conclusion of, if we're talking specifically about that issue and having completely different differences in morals, whether it's in real life or characters, there needs to be a conversation had. And for me, I've definitely had those conversations in real life with characters I haven't wanted to really play or say a certain thing. I've had to have a conversation with myself and the character and say, what are the similarities here? And if we are different, why? Why does this character, as this person, think this way? And why do I think this way? And for me, it all comes down to not either appreciating or being educated on another person's experience. Like Ricky said earlier, if you're in a certain bubble and you grow up in a certain way and in a certain environment, of course, you're a product of your environment. But I think everyone has to challenge themselves and see the other light, or at least try to. That's the best answer I could have with coming to a resolution, right? If that's the goal. And there's so much education out there. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and someone was saying, oh, how does somebody see the other side of this? If we're talking about race or class, Google it. You know, we have so much amazing media. There's so many documentaries on things just to teach you. Siri can read a book to you. You know, it's crazy. We live in a crazy time. But yeah, the information is there and it's free. So I think that's the best answer, but it's if the person wants it, you know.
Does anybody ever feel like they don't want to learn more? Or they've reached a point where they're not going to move towards another idea? So Dudney and then Lorenzo.
Yeah, I'm just having a hard time with that lately, and I've found that it's just because of, you know, the place that we're in. I'm with, you know, things not related to the character. I guess I'll go back to the character. I'll start there first. For some reason, as an actor, I totally admire what Dominique said, is that for some reason I'm able to I guess humble myself or suppress my own opinions and put myself in the shoes of that character and understand, you know, well, why would I feel this way, or find things that are similar between myself and the character and then act on that. But lately, I will say that so much work needs to be done on my end, because I am in a place where I don't have the capacity to listen and hear a point of view from especially if it's political. I just don't have the capacity to hear it right now. And I think it's because there's just so much at stake. So it's just so difficult to just, you know, take a step back and try to understand and find the similarity, or to not look at difference as a way to disconnect or a way to cancel someone else. So I don't have a way to fix it right now, or an answer that would be to how to put a positive spin on it right now. But I am struggling with that lately. I think growing up as a child, I was always surrounded by people of different walks of life and different religious beliefs and backgrounds, and that was fine. But now in 2020, for some reason, just with our political state, that is the only thing that I can't shake. That's where I'm at right now. So I agree with Victoria. He would have been out of the house too.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, so like that difference and like having that discussion, and like, you know, I'm just the type of person, like, for me, I don't like confrontation. I mean, I don't think, you know, there's one person that says I like confrontation. Like, I don't know if that's out there, but, you know, as you know, you said, like, there needs to be a discussion, right? At some point, whether we like it or not, we're gonna have to talk about it. So I don't know, I just kind of thinking about these themes, and I'm thinking about Cole House Walker Jr. when he has a nice Model T Ford and he just wants to drive down the street, right? And he can't just go down the street to check up on Sarah, or he just wants to be heard and get justice for Sarah, you know. And I'm thinking about those are discussions that, you know, were tried as a character. You know, though that's a discussion that was back then, or we want to, you know, tell the story. That was a discussion that was, you know, trying to come to some sort of resolution. And then I think about myself in certain things where I think about me as a Black man, or me being a gay Black man. And there are some things that I want to discuss and things I want to talk about, where I just, like Dunny said, you know, it's at a point where you just gotta stand. I just want to stand there and be like, you know what? Sometimes, like, I want to tell y'all about all the differences and like all the injustices and like, but at this point, I'm just like, dang, how long do we have to keep saying like, hey, hello, does anybody know what I'm trying to spew out right now? I'm like, jump in, feel free to jump in, but it's just like at some point where I'm like, it's been in people's face for so long, I just get to a point where I'm just like, you know, you just want to throw up your hands and you're just like, you know what, hey, it's all good. But I feel like me as Lorenzo and me as an actor, it's definitely some things I need to pick up from Cole House Walker Jr. to walk in the shed of light sometimes from day to day.
I completely feel what you mean. I found that I'm just tired. I am so tired. It seems as though difference used to be a chance to learn and grow and listen and figure out different things and figure out how that resonates inside of you. And now it's become so polarizing. If you have a view, you have to have the view. You can't just kind of have the view. It seems as though people will live and die by this one thing. They will be completely recognizable by this one thing. Right. And it's tiring. I found in my work that sometimes I'm just like, I need the day to not watch the news. But then I feel guilty because I say, okay, well, I'm not keeping up on what's happening. And then I hear from someone else that this is happening. And you're like, your brain is messed up, especially because there's a pandemic happening. Remember that? We're all on Zoom. There's a pandemic happening and we're tired from that. Then, Lorenzo, as you were saying, from being a person of color, being a Black person, I'm tired of people getting gunned down in the streets. As a woman, I'm tired of the misogyny. It's just, and then you add politics on top of it. What's the point? It's so tiring. It's so hard to keep being a kind, compassionate, caring human being that wants to learn from other people when the other, what I found is when you say the other, it's hard to then find the inner compassion of that. And Randy, I always talk with Randy and he always says, you know, meet people where they're at, but sometimes it's so hard to meet people where they're at because where they're at is across the pond, so far away, and you're just trying and trying and trying. But at some point in time, your brain just shuts off because you've got pandemic and injustice and you got to worry about your bills and what about your job and all this boo, 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 boo. It's just hard. It's tiring. That's what I found. And I will say that it's getting harder and harder to find the beauty in the differences, to sit back and say, okay, they're different than me. Let me find out why. Let me find out how that resonates. It's getting harder. But I think as individuals, we have to find that compassion, but it's just, I completely feel where everyone's at. It's hard. It's just hard. And, you know, who knows what the solution is, but I think it's recognizing not to let it ruin yourself first. Recognizing, okay, I know I'm a kind, compassionate, caring human being. How do I continue?
I'm going to add to that, Alex, because when, and I don't mean to make it sound like, oh, it just started, but when all the recent things happened with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, I went through this odd thing walking through Wegmans. I remember walking around Wegmans and seeing a random white person and immediately thinking, God, are you racist? Are you racist? Okay, all right, well, then keep walking. And then I see a person of color and I'm like, oh my God, do you think I'm racist? So how do I like make sure everyone knows I'm not a racist? Like, I love everybody and da da da. But I'm gonna, and I'm sure Dudney remembers this moment, but I truly just love everyone. And I remember there being a point where I would say to people, oh, I don't see color, because I thought that was the right thing to say. I thought the right thing to say is, I don't see color, I see you. And then I was educated and someone said, it's really not, you do see color. You see that I'm different and that's okay, accept that. And then you don't have to worry about working so hard to make sure people know that, you know, you love everyone. But Dudney and I were in the middle of a performance for Violet. And for the most part, the audience was wonderful. There was one particular day, the tongue clicking was happening. Every single time I would get close to Dudney, there would be a woman in the audience tongue clicking. And I remember thinking, this woman, I just wanted to stop acting and be like, whatever you're doing, stop. I can't stand it. So when I went to go kiss Dudney, she said out loud, oh God, is she going to kiss that black man? Now, I had a decision to make in that moment of, do I stop and turn to her and ask her to leave? Or do I continue and kiss Dudney as hard as I possibly can and stick my tongue down his throat and be like, yeah, lady, like, how was that? Tongue click that. And I did.
Those are two options. Those are two choices.
Well, as Dudney will tell you, I kissed him harder that day and I made sure it lasted as long as it possibly could. So if you want to come to the audience during a show like Violet and tongue click, you're going to see some tongue.
Wow, Michelle. Well, I'm sure that you and Dudney talked in the back and he consented to the kiss. So I'm sure we're fine with this.
Yes,
Yes, I did.
I actually did say to him off stage, I'm going to kiss you and I'm going to lick your teeth tonight.
She did.
And he said, okay.
Perfect. So, I mean, that's funny, but you bring up a really important point that I would love to explore a little bit more. As an artist, when you are in the middle of your work, you're at work, and someone is interfering, whether on purpose or accidentally or, you know, unknowingly. Are there moments where you think it's appropriate to step out of the fantasy world and stop? We all know the stories on Broadway where people have stopped their performances and addressed people with phones and, you know, or candy wrappers or things like that. Dudney, you wanted to speak on that? Or you just, oh, okay, you just didn't.
I was agreeing with you, but yeah, I mean, I would say that there's a line there. I don't know if I would be able to. I'm the type of person where all of my emotions are here. So if I step out of the character to respond to something like that, we probably wouldn't be able to get back. But I will say moments like that are tough. They're tough. But again, I look at it as an opportunity to continue to tell the story, because then if it's shaking you and you're so uncomfortable in the audience that you're making the reactions like that, then hopefully I'm doing my job. And in the back of your mind somewhere, there's something that's grinding against your spirit that you just can't, you don't want to see, you know, Michelle kiss me, or you don't want to see things like that. So my hope is that, you know, as the story continues to unfold, is that, you know, hopefully someone else in the audience caught that and tried to, you know, say, hey, like, you know, you should figure out what that is, because that wasn't cool. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe as the story played out, they thought twice about, you know, doing that again. But it's tough. I think there are many times where, you know, you're challenged on stage in the middle of a moment. But I always err towards sticking with telling the story and not breaking character. I will say, though, unrelated to race, I saw Once on This Island here in New York, And I will never forget that there was a moment where all of the actors were, I Am Forever Yours is the song, and it's where Daniel is kind of being given back up to the gods, and Tamun is singing. And there was a woman 3 seats next to me, to my right, who decided to sing out loud, Broadway stage. She decided to sing I Am Forever Yours. And one of the leads in the middle of the performance turned around and she said, shh, and then turned back around. And I mean, it brought chills straight through everybody. So I've seen people do it, and she was able to pick up where they left off, and we moved on. But I don't think I'm at a point where I'd be able to do that yet.
Ricky?
Yeah, so first of all, that's hilarious. But yeah, kind of to piggyback off of that, off of Dudney's point, you know, well, first of all, I mean, I can think of like a list of 10 times when there's been something happening, you know, in my periphery that is just, you know, constant or, you know, something. But, you know, like Dudney said, at the end of the day, it's your job to tell the story. And I like to think too, I don't know what someone in the audience is feeling in that moment. Like what level of connection that person might be having to the story that's happening in front of them. So therefore I feel like it's my job to continue doing my job and keep progressing the story. Now, I mean, that said, there are moments where, you know, you have to kind of make a judgment call if there's something potentially unsafe happening in the audience, or, you know, what have you. You just got to use your best judgment. But, you know, it's one of those balancing acts, you know, but it's a real test of your patience for sure.
So we've been having conversations about things that we all feel there should be solutions to, right? Various problems, various challenges, and things like that. And a lot of times when we talk about those things, we say, well, you know, I don't know what the answer is, or I don't know what the solution is. And I think because we say that because a lot of times we are expected to know, we are expected to have this really special wisdom. I want to know, what do you need? Instead of how can you solve, or what are your answers? What do you need as individual artists to continue this work? We're in a pandemic. We're in what is about to become a very serious economic downturn. What are you finding that you need as an artist to continue forth? Without you, these stories can't happen. What do you need?
I mean, I'll talk about this real quick, but I think as performers and actors, we definitely need each other, first of all, but we are such a tight community that this is great. This is great. I can see all my friends and this is wonderful. And I haven't seen Alex in forever. I found your sandals in my house the other day. I have to bring them to you. But the connection, man, like, I don't think we ever understood how huge the whole is of, you know, missing each other and missing being together and creating a piece of art for an audience and having that received and hearing people talk about it. That has left a significant hole in my heart, in my life, in my spirit. I have moments where I just sit here and be like, I don't know how much longer I can go doing this. Like, you know, if you have a lag in work because, you know, you're not right for something that season, that's one thing. But this is like, come on, like, we need each other and we need people. And I think for me, it's horribly depressing to not have that connection, human connection.
Yeah, I mean, just with theater and everything as a community, what I need the opening number to Smokey Joe's Cafe in the neighborhood. I need that right now, because that just is a whole mood, and and just that faded pictures in my scrapbook, like that's just, I don't know, that's just so, and I get emotional thinking about it because that whole time, like the day Broadway closed and I saw that, oh, and it was like international news. I cried for like a week, no lie. Like I was just like, seeing the Broadway lights go out, I was just like, no. But I think this is the time where I kind of thought back to the beginning, like how I started on my journey as an artist and like what I loved and like, you know, okay, let's just refresh on why I'll do this and why I love this so much and like that connection with people and the connection with the audience. So, you know, just for me specifically, I've been reading old plays and writing music and like seeing everyone right now, like Michelle said, like I'm just like, you know, internally. But at the same time, I think this is also a good time where some great art is about to start popping up and great stories are going to start hitting the forefront. Like, say, for instance, 10 years from now, just imagine what new plays are going to be launching. Imagine what new musicals are going to be hitting the stage because people were in their house for 2 months back in 2020, but now it's, you know, let's say 2030. And now Broadway is insane. Like that's where my mindset is like, oh, I can't wait till 2030 because I know music is going to be nuts. And I know artists are going to be off the chain, you know? So, I mean, I'm kind of thinking back and pushing forward at the same time and not trying to most emotionally stay dormant and just the Buffalo community and just seeing everyone and the artists and just in our bubble here, just to kind of speak to like Musical Fair and all the theater goers, like it's not a day I don't go by and I don't think about the applause and like in the audience and the connection that we made. So I don't know, that's where I am. And I just, you know, my mind's going a mile a minute thinking about everyone and entertaining.
What do you need, Dominique?
I need to laugh. I need to laugh. I want to do comedy. Like, oh my gosh. Ricky and I did West Side Story together and we played opposites. I was Maria and he was Tony. And I need that. I need like to be able to, everyone always has that like one person in a show and like you always gravitate, like Michelle said, we need our people. That I really, really miss that show. I think that's the last show I did. Jeez. I need comedy and maybe that's one way that we can all, you know, lift each other. And Lorenzo, going off your point, maybe there will be more, you know, comedies in theater. I'm also curious to see where writing and new pieces go, because I'm all here to be a dramatic queen as well, but I'm really excited to see, you know, the jokes and the cue lines. Yeah, I need that. I need to be respectful of my mental health. And I think that's something as an actor too, like that's around the clock. Your physical, your mental health, always making sure you're in check. And it definitely has been harder now than ever. Yeah, to create, it's so insane to be able to put out a good product in terms of a performance. You don't realize how many pieces go into it. If I had to go on stage right now, oh God, I don't know how that would turn out. You know what I'm saying? Like there really is a lot of pieces to the puzzle, and maybe once in a while I do take that for granted. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
Absolutely, 100%. Victoria, what do you need?
I need change. I would like for our community, our theater community, like all over globally, to understand that this is the perfect moment for us to make change, right? All of us are having so much downtime, right? We're not actively performing like we used to be, but this is the moment where us as performers can expect more from administrators of theater, from artistic directors. This is when us as performers can create the stories that we want to be told, you know? So this is the moment for change. So I want to be a part of the change, and I want to be comfortable in the discomfort of not performing. That's it.
Thank you. I was gonna just keep calling on folks, but I don't want to put pressure on you if you don't care to share what you need at the moment. But yeah, go ahead, Alexandria.
So I had the incredible fortune to do Swing, Swing, Swing with 5 other performers, and everything we did it with masks, we videotaped it, I was very fortunate. We did all of that, and we were saying how much we just miss being in a dressing room with like 12 other people, and just like Dom was saying, like just laughing and jokes and telling about your day and connecting through this piece. Like, I know you all feel it. Like, the reason why the shows are so good, I think, is because we are all so close to each other. And like Michelle was saying, seeing everyone is just, my heart is so full, but it hurts so much because you can't hug, you can't touch, you can't give a squeeze, you can't do any of that. And it's just so hard. So for me personally, I need the connection with my friends, my colleagues. I need to tell a story. I need to be working towards a goal with other people that are like-minded. And if you've ever been in a dressing room, you know that it's just pandemonium in the best way. It's like Thanksgiving every day without fighting, or like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just one of those feelings where I just am so thankful and happy and welcome, and it's just one of the most lovely feelings. But I will say what I'm very thankful for with the whole pandemic was, I'm very thankful to have been working, but I was working nonstop for like 2.5, 3 years. So what this pandemic has really taught me is, okay, slow down, Alex. You don't need to keep going and going and going. How do you feel? How's your mental health? So these 6, 7, 8,000 trillion years in my room, in my apartment, has just been, it's been hard, obviously, but it's a chance for me to finally say, how is my mental health? How am I? Check in with myself. Because what I found was, I look at all my memories from Facebook. Last year, I was doing 4 shows at once. I don't know how I did it, but I was somehow doing 4 shows at once. And I'm very thankful to have done it. But now looking back, I'm like, I don't know. Oh, it's so hard to even answer one email. And I feel like that's how we're all feeling. It's now this is a time to check in with ourselves and say, how am I feeling? What do I need? So what I need is for theater to be back so I can be backstage with my homies, hanging out. That's all I need.
So the chat is open, and I'm already seeing people talking about what they need, right? We all need something. And I think in a lot of ways, when we give ourselves the opportunity to articulate what we really need and force ourselves to really think about that, we make discoveries that we may not have even realized. It's really interesting when you have to speak that into existence of like, you know what, this is actually what I need. So please feel free to talk about what you need in the chat, and also drop your questions in the chat, because I'm going to share them with our panelists. I'm going to give you an opportunity, just give me a little hand wave if you wanted to add to that. Otherwise, I'm happy to move on. I don't have to stay. Okay. So I saw a question come through. Someone wanted to know, what kinds of stories do you think people are going to want to see, and I quote, post-pandemic, post-BLM marches? What do you think people might want to see? And if you're not sure how what you think people might want to see, what might you want to see? Some folks already spoke to kind of, here's what I would like. I would like to see change. I would like to see theater come back. What kind of theater do you think audiences are going to want to see? And any answer is correct, right?
I think that audiences and everyone here would love to see more love interests in different shapes and sizes. I think that, and colors and everything. Able-bodied people, not able-bodied people, everything. I think that one common denominator is we all know what it's like to love and to feel love. And I, for one, am tired of just like the cookie cutter love. I want it all.
Alex, you threw a hand up.
Yes, going to that, Dom, we have the same brain. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I just want to see people who look like me, who look like Thembi, who look like Victoria, who look like Lorette. I want to see it all. That's what's so great, is that these stories have happened through centuries to everyone, not people who just look like me or people who just look like Ricky or whoever XYZ. We're craving seeing real, seeing truth. That's what I think.
Who else? Lorenzo?
So, you know, they're saying, okay, what kind of theater, what people want to see post-pandemic and like BLM and all this. I'm kind of seeing, I would love to see like, and I feel like, I don't know, just work with me here for a second. I would love to see like and this could be serious, it could be comedic, whatever you need, whatever way you need to take this, take it that way. But I would love to see the pandemic and COVID-19 as like this lead role or this lead character in some show on some stage and working through everybody's life and lifestyle, however it may be, or however it's gonna come to fold or fruition or whatever. And just knocking people down as it goes through the whole show and pick it like just a kaleidoscope of just a whirlwind of all this mess and craziness. At the same time, it's not knocking everybody down at the same time. And people are still pushing through and pulling through this huge main character that's COVID and pandemic and all that. But the people are still rising up against it. And just, I don't know, I just see something like that working on the stage some way, somehow.
So you want to see that story right up there.
I want to see.
Well, we can all write that one together, right?
Don't be that hard.
Living it. Yep. Victoria?
I want to see innovation. Like I want to see a new art form coming out of this pandemic, right? Because in my opinion, theater happens live. Right? You cannot replace it with Zoom readings, with all this virtual programming that's happening. You can't call it theater, in my opinion, right? It's virtual programming, right? It's film, it's short movies, it's, self-tape, it's this, it's that. So I would love to see like a new way of telling stories through in response to the pandemic that we don't call theater.
Wow. Other thoughts on that? Things that you think audiences want to see or things that you want to see? I will say that I think it's really interesting. You all are creators beyond acting on stage. I'm curious, when you envision this future and when you envision this different kind of work, what do you see for yourselves? Do you see yourself attempting a new area of your craft? Do you see yourself like zeroing in on something and saying, you know what, I'm really going to get much, much better at this thing that I've been putting off? Are you making resolutions for yourself? Or are you just like, listen, I just need to survive. I can't. Very curious about that. Ricky?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. obviously, to echo what everyone said, we have that just trait that we need to, do something. We need to perform for people. We need to tell stories. We need to, do the work. But also, there is that side that's just like, I need to do my part so that we can do the work later. Like wearing masks and social distancing and everything. It's just so crucial so that we can get to that point. But, to answer your question a little more, I think, this is the perfect time to, really think about, well, what are the things that I've maybe been hesitant to try, or things that maybe I want to improve on when I get the opportunity to actually get back on a stage. Do I want to tap dance? Do I want to learn soliloquies? Do I want to, whatever, speech, practice, whatever. I think this is a good time to really step out of those comfort zones. I know I'm working on a few things myself that hopefully I'll get to put into practice sooner rather than later. But those kind of things have been kind of they've allowed me to look forward to the day that I can actually put it into practice.
I have a question from an audience member who says, what can we do to broaden, attract, and engage with a more diverse audience? And I ask this question knowing that you may or may not have an answer for that, because I wonder who, we have lots of questions, right, in this industry, but I wonder who has the answers, and who do we direct the questions to, who can actually do something about it? Is it you, or is it someone else, or is it all of us? I think a lot of times, as a person of color, I find myself being asked questions that I find myself being asked to solve problems that I didn't create and that I suffer from. So I put that caveat there because I think it's important for you to know that I'm not asking you to solve a problem that you didn't create, but that I'm giving you an opportunity to say, this is not my question to answer, if you so choose.
That's like, I think that's where all of us are like stumped, right? We're like,
yeah, and I think that's important, right? Thank you for acknowledging that. I think it is important. I think it's important for all of us to sit in the space and recognize that, where do these answers need to come from? How can more diverse, what does it mean to engage a diverse audience? Does it mean that the work has to be different? Does it mean that the players have to be different?
Yes.
Does it mean that No, go ahead.
In my work with Raíces, it's okay. Growing up in musical theater, I was always the only Latina, without a doubt, always. So I knew that I was a part of something, that I was in love, because I'm truly in love with theater, truly in love with musical theater, that I was in love with something that was not a part of my culture, right? Theater is not the chosen way that the majority of Latinos tell stories, right? So when Raíces was born, it was and it still is, very difficult to get the Latinx community to come to our shows. It was very difficult to engage. It still is. And I had to come to and it's not like I have solved it, obviously. But a little thing that I learned that I discovered was that I have to stop trying to tell stories in this way, because the way that we're all telling stories now, right, in a modern theater with lights and costumes and all that good stuff, that's modern, right? If you think about it, right? The way our ancestors told stories was very different than the way we're telling stories in musical theater or in theater. So like all this time thinking, how can I connect with the community, right? And share with them this thing that I love so much, which is theater. And I have to find different ways of doing that. Like, does that mean that I just set up a tent in the community parking lot of Tops in the West Side and just like start doing a monologue, start singing a song? You know what I mean? Like just like get my ensemble to get in a circle in the parking lot of Tops and just like start freestyling with each other. Like how can I share what I love so much and what I know can be so strong, right, with my community, with my people, and specifically Latinos, when I know that it is not something that's a part of their culture. So that's like, it's hard.
So Victoria, do you find yourself, and this question can resonate with everybody who wants to answer it, do you ever find yourself at cross purposes with your craft? Do you find your ancestry, your identity, your culture at cross purposes with the thing that you're in love with that you do?
It's like the place I live in. That's like I straddle that place. You know what I mean? Like one foot here, one foot there. You know, like I know, listen, I love my people. I love my people. And I do what I do because I love my people, because I want to represent my people. But I know that if everything was like, you know, some merengue, right? And you're dancing and you're drinking and you're listening to a live band, oh, they would be there. They would totally be there. It's like trying to sell a product to a community that is like, but it's just because they don't know it. It's just because they don't know the strength, the power of it. You know what I mean? It's just because they don't realize that they tell stories in the same way, but it's just through a different medium. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm having difficulty figuring out, how to help my community connect the power of storytelling and realize that it's what you do when you're sitting around in your kitchen table and you're talking about what, you know, Fulanita did the other day when she was like, oh yeah, and then he did this, and then, that's exactly what it is. We're just putting it up on stage. Like, it's hard.
Wow. I mean, is this resonating with anyone else? Do other folks have thoughts in terms of what Victoria is struggling with her theater company, Raíces?
Not culturally per se, because I think for me, I was 12 or 13 and the first show that I'd ever done was at Ujima. So I was immersed in that realm. But I will say, to kind of piggyback on the question though, I did find that growing up in an environment like with Paul Robeson Theater and Ujima, I did not know that there was a realm of Irish classical theater, musical fair, Kavanoki theater. Like, there was a divide, and quite frankly, I still think there is a divide. So I think that the work needs to be done to spread and reach out to other communities by trying to figure out how to do more collaborations. Like In the Heights was an example of where two worlds kind of came together to share this story. Easier said than done, but yeah, I think for me the seeing what I knew art of one way, like praise dancing in church, or, you know, the nativity story, things like that. That's all I knew of. But then, you know, once I learned about, you know, so many other plays and musicals and topics, and y'all can talk about, you know, you can have a play and it doesn't have to be about Jesus, or it doesn't have to be about, you know, the homeland. It could be about, you know, you just, you know, sitting and chill with your friends, and family issues and sexuality issues and all of these things. So I think it was amazing that that's the cultural difference, I guess, is that everything's kind of out on the table in a script. It's changing now. It's not, now everything's a bit more progressive, but I think, yeah, just getting, like Victoria said, I do think like get that tent up in that, you know, on Niagara Street and just go at it and see who shows up. That's what it's like here in New York. I'm in New York City, and I'm now with the pandemic, it's, you know, the city's starting to wake up again. But when I first got here last year, I had a running tab of things that I wanted to do and wanted to see, because every neighborhood I walked through, there was something I hadn't experienced before, or someone, you know, playing a style of music I wasn't familiar with. And that's what led me to, you know, feel it out. And I think that that's what'll bring different types of people into the theater and into those seats.
Thank you. So we're at almost 8:45. Miss Dominique is going to have to go in a minute or so. So I'm going to give her a chance to say a parting word before we spend the next 5 or 10 minutes wrapping up. Go for it, Dominique.
Awesome. Going back to the question of how do we get a more diverse audience, things like that, I do think obviously part of it is the content. What is being performed is going to attract different people. I'm going to tell people in my circle, oh, you should come see this, or I think you would like that. That is obviously helpful. But I think also if the budget allows for certain groups of people to have, you know, discount tickets, I think that's really important. And I don't think there's enough of that in theater. I worked for theaters and the tickets are $40. Like, for some of my friends would be like, whoa, that's a lot. Where they might needed to really have seen that story and really needed to see that show. So I think that's part of it. And I think administratively, where do you advertise? Do you advertise within your little circle, or the people that you know are going to buy the tickets and that's it? Because the price is you know the money is going to be taken care of. Or do you do more fundraisers and outreaching to places that you normally wouldn't? Flyers, posters, like these are just old school ways of, you know, advertising something. But if it's in the right place at the right time, somebody could see it and it can change their life. You just never know. With that, I have to run. I really, really appreciate being a part of this and being able to see all these lovely faces, because I haven't seen y'all in a minute. But yes, much, much love, and take care, everybody.
Thank you. So with that, we're at 8:45. I know that we have about another 5 minutes before we're all going to sign off. And this has been such a rich conversation, a conversation that is only beginning. And I hope that we're able to continue this conversation that we've just scratched the surface of. Folks, definitely drop some more questions in the chat. We will save the chat and make sure that we save these questions for later, because they're questions that continue. So what I would love to do is just have us all sort of sign off with some thoughts. I mean, we talked about what we see in the future, and we talked about what we need, right, as artists. But I want you to sign off and tell us something that I haven't asked you about, or something that this community hasn't asked of you, or this community isn't doing yet that you would like to be done, or what is it that you want to share with us, or the message that you want to send as we continue this conversation. And if you don't have a particular message you want to send, then what is it that you'd like to share with us? Otherwise, it's kind of a freestyle moment. Ms. Victoria?
I would like to share that the theater industry has so many different jobs. You know, it's not only performing. And I think that as BIPOC performers and theater people, we need more people of color designing. We need more people of color writing plays and composing music and writing lyrics.
Uh-oh,
We
Victoria,
need more
we
people of color
lost.
directing.
Can you?
So,
Can you just go back?
am I back? Am I still?
Yeah, just go back 2 sentences.
More people directing, more people designing, more people writing plays and musicals. I think that that's a big way for our stories, right, to become the norm and not like, you know, a Latino story, a Black story, right? And that's how we can have ownership, and that's how we can really invest into our stories being told. And it's by designers of color, writers of color, and directors of color.
Thank you. Other thoughts? I see Michelle, you have got a little one there. What's your name?
What's your name?
Aurora.
Hi, Aurora.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us for this conversation. Michelle, did you want to sign off with some final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm 100% with Victoria. I think it would be so nice because every show that I've ever done, it's not, for lack of a better word, black or white. And I don't mean that in a racial way. I mean that in a story way. So I would love to see every show have a panel that they can take from. So have experts from every single point of view from that show, so that it's not, you know, because I'm sure there are, and I apologize, I'm saying this as a white woman, but I know that there has to be, you know, a person for every one of that of the cast of the show. So if you have a Black person in the show that has to deal with Black issues, it would be very wonderful if you could have someone, whether it be a dramaturg or something, that can help with those things. So not just one person to do all of those issues, because Violet was very much obviously a story about race, but also about, you know, deformity and not loving yourself and not knowing yourself and being so angry that you can't see past, you know, what's in front of your own face. You know, all of that, if we had a panel of people to help with that, that would be my wish, so that everyone felt included and loved and cared for.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Aurora. Dudney, how about you?
The same thing, I agree. I think more diversity and inclusion on the production side of things. It's something that is just important, you know, and allows, I think, freedom for all actors to tell their story. I think I can look back at a time where at Musical Fair, we worked on Sophisticated Ladies, and John Fredo, who was the director / choreographer at the time, had brought in Alexis, who was a woman of color, to work with Cecilia Barron. And I remember seeing the difference between him giving her the, you know, material and the moves and everything to you know, to move through the choreography of the piece. But when Alexis did it, there was just a language, the idioms, there was just something else behind that she just got, because it was rooted in, you know, the history of our culture and who she is as a woman, both of them as Black women. So I think it's important, like Michelle said, not just for, excuse the noise in the background, not just for POCs, but also for all walks of life. You know, if you look at something like, I can't remember the piece that was going to be produced at 710, and the lead character has
Are you talking about Curious Incident? The dog in the nighttime? Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I remember hearing that, you know, the director made sure to connect with someone that has walked that life, you know. So I think it's important in all, you know, when it comes to color, cultural backgrounds, to make sure that, you know, the people that are behind the table, they check off each one of the boxes, that it's not just one person telling our story or another person's story.
Thank you. Ricky, how about you?
Sure. I think, you know, I agree with what everyone said. Gosh, it's so hard. I think it's important, you know, when you're, as far as like maybe like an audience perspective goes, seeking out material that you otherwise wouldn't may otherwise connect with, in the sense that, like, you wouldn't seek out characters or stories that mostly connect with your experiences. So go, read plays that were written by authors that don't even come close to your life experience or look like you or sound like you or talk or walk like you. Watching like movies, shows that you otherwise wouldn't maybe think to seek out. I think it's really important, just to get a broader idea of, different walks of life and get an understanding of people's experiences. I think that's just so important. And yeah, that's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you. And Alex, how about you?
I just, like everyone is saying, it's time for new things. It's time for you can see in society, people are calling for it, craving it. It's time for all stories to be told by not just this set of people. It's like Lynn was saying in the chat, it's time for all of these stories to be told. It's time for people of color to be directing, obviously acting, singing, choreographing, everything. It's time. It's just time. Like we are all craving. We are all connected. We are all craving for that connection. We have to have it. And I think after so many months of not having that, I think that's really where we're going to progress. And I can't wait for it. I'm very excited.
Thank you. And Lorenzo.
We are all connected. And I mean, Victoria, I'm not that far from Niagara. I'm ready to go in the parking lot at Tops right now, just to kind of put that out there. I'm not that far from that. So, I mean, just seeing it out there with everyone's thoughts, and like, I agree 100% with POC and telling all these stories and everyone's opinions and backgrounds. But y'all, let's just keep the theater alive and keep it going strong, and like not let things get shut down, and try our best to like support our local theaters and companies around, and wherever you're from or wherever you are and where you're watching from. I don't know, it's we need it and we got to have it, period. And I just want to say, keep it alive, and let's keep telling these stories and keep connecting with each other.
Thank you all so much for your time, for your generosity of spirit, for opening yourselves up to this conversation. At this time, I would love to give anyone who cares to an opportunity to turn their camera on so that we can give you the round of applause that you deserve. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, just go ahead and turn your cameras on, wave, and you certainly do not have to if you don't want to. But usually when I do these types of discussions, I like for people to see all of the folks who've been listening to them and connecting. Yay.
And if I can just add something real quick, I really want to encourage everyone who has bought a ticket for a show and it has been canceled, please consider, for our sake, so that we have a theater to go back to, please consider taking that ticket and making that a donation as opposed to asking for a refund. Please, please, please.
Excellent point. Thank you. And thank you, those of you who chose to show yourselves, including my daughter who's joining us there. Hey, Nadia. So that's it for us. It's 8:57. Brandy, would you like to take us home and say good night? I'm hi. Oh, everybody's joining. See, it's like we are all connected, right?
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. We've got a lot of work to do. This is a great conversation to help to push it forward. So we will continue to do that. And I look forward, oh my gosh, I look forward to seeing you all back at Musical Fair or wherever you are. We'll be there. So thank you again. Have a wonderful night.
Thanks everybody who joined us tonight. Have a really wonderful night. We look forward to the next conversation.